My paranormal experiences are things I think about every day of my life. My name is Steve. I am a New York City attorney. I'm 47 years old. I have a lovely wife and two kids. I am a mind's eye seer, being that I see spirits through my mind's eye. Not my natural eyes, and we'll talk about that, but my mind's eye. What I see are angels, demons, the presence of God. I see people, human spirits. On occasion, I see the departed, and I might get a message from them to the living. That's very rare, but mostly it's like angels in the presence of God. Growing up, I had two encounters where I felt another presence. The first was when I was a teenager. This was I was 15 or 16. This is like 91 or 92. I want to say it was probably the early part of 1992. And I was sitting in my room and I just felt an otherworldly presence in my home, like right there in my bedroom. It could have been God, it could have been an angel. I mean, I have a better vocabulary to kind of explain what that was now, but at the time it was the first time. And it just startled me. I was like, what? It was good. It was a good thing. And, if I'll be honest, about 5 years later, I was, an atheist agnostic. So take that for what it's worth. Notwithstanding that, it was a significant moment of my teenage years. And then in 1995, I was 19 years old. I was taking chemistry classes at UVA during the summer. They're right there in Charlottesville in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I would go to the mountains on my days off from studying to kind of clear my head. And I was walking the Appalachian Trail, which I'd done many times before. Not, the whole thing, just a few, that portion. And I felt like I walked in across a barrier, an invisible barrier, like a force field or something. I don't know. And I just felt this immense presence of danger. And it startled me. I just stopped. And then I took another step. And that same feeling just intensified by 10, 100-fold. It spooked me. I turned around and left. And immediately it went away. And I won't say it was Bigfoot or Dogman. At the time, I thought it was a bear or something. I don't know. But something was about to pounce on me, and I felt it. I'm not saying I have spidey sense for danger. I'm just saying that just happened, and I know that I almost stepped on a cobra a couple years later, and I did not get that sense. No, but I scared the snake as much as it scared me, so it was not ready to attack me. But that feeling in 1995 with I'll just go with a bear, it felt like I was about to be attacked, unless I turn around. And one last tangent before I get into the real gist of my story is I was a biology major, pre-med. In 1997, I dissected a human cadaver. In 1998, this is part of undergrad, I was an English minor, biology degree, English minor. And I took a fiction class, and I wrote a short story about a med student who's haunted by the body that he's dissecting. So, the horror story. Save that thought, because it's coming. It'll be very important later on. Okay, so here's the story. It's all sort of intertwined with my religious upbringing. I grew up in the Worldwide Church of God, which is kind of obscure now, but, we were kind of an apocalyptic cult to some people, or the true church to other people. But in 1994, we suddenly converted to regular evangelical, Christian, normal mainstream beliefs. By 96, 97, I was tired. I was just so tired of all the religious turmoil. And I deconstructed, and I had friends who, kept me going to church and whatever, but I really didn't feel at home with any religious community for 10 or 11 years. So that was the time of my break from church. That's another story to go into detail about that. And in 2008, I had an encounter with what I would call was Jesus, a fireball of liquid love is really kind of what I don't know how else to describe it. And it was this thing just came to me, and it brought me back to church. I believe in evolution, I still do, but that answered a lot of questions. It's like the supernatural, experiential power of the divine answers questions that books cannot, theology cannot. I'm sorry. It's like, but like that is just, gold. All right. So heading into 2009, New Year's Eve, December 31, 2008, I made a prayer to God. Just like, hey, let's catch up for the last 10 years that I missed from church. I don't know if I regret this prayer or not, but, I'm laughing about it now. I mean, I guess in hindsight, I'm laughing at it. But at the time, I didn't know what I was getting into. Do not try this at home, kids. In late January, it began. I believe it was January 28th. I know that day because that's the day I closed on my condo. It could have been that morning, the night before, or that evening. But I watched the movie The Accused with Jodie Foster. Not that that has any relation to what I'm about to say, but it's what I did that night. And I went to bed. I didn't finish it. A few hours later, I needed to go to the bathroom. I woke up. But in the room, there were 2 or 3 demons floating around my bed. I didn't hear them or see them, but I felt their presence. It's like I suddenly had a sixth sense radar. I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't like an aura, but I could feel where they were, their distance, direction. From biology, sharks had these things called the ampullae of Lorenzini, where they detect fish with electromagnetic sensors. That's the only thing I can think of that, or a radar, that can kind of is comparable to what I felt. I felt where they were, how far they were away. And I also felt the presence of God. My reaction was just shock, confusion, bewilderment, fear and fury, and honestly, I was just paralyzed. Now, I've heard of people talking about sleep paralysis. This was not any description of sleep paralysis. I wasn't immobilized against my will. I didn't want to move. But there was also like a magnet from God kind of pulling me down that said, you don't have to fight, I got this. And if I wanted to overcome the magnet, I could. It wasn't so strong that I couldn't. And the spirits injected me with a fear. Like, I mean that literally. Like, they would like shoot darts or arrows into me. And the only effect was just fear of them, fear that they won't leave, fear that they'll manifest into something. I don't know. And probably it goes back to maybe my childhood. I got a phobia of this sort of thing, which may have been why I wrote that story in 1998. I don't know. So another slight tangent is, this will become very significant later on, is I was on very good terms with my girlfriend at the time. I say this because when people try to dismiss my story, they say you had girlfriend problems, and well, it manifested into sleep disorder, which manifested into demons. Well, at this point, my girlfriend and I were in great, relationship. In fact, I actually paid off her student loans that week because I thought we were going to get married. Like, I'm a New York City attorney with a big firm job. You can do that, and so it rattled me, and I thought it went away. A few months later, in early March, I started having girlfriend problems, and she actually broke up with me the first time. And I was in like a church group. I had what I now call is the aquarium. I closed my eyes, like in prayer with church people, and my eyelids just turned blue. And I see this little, like a tentacle pointing at me. And I'm like, I'm a little confused. And then what comes into view, this is all my eyelids. Like they are like a film theater. I see an octopus. And then I see a shrimp, dolphin and bubbles. And it's just like I'm watching, the undersea life. I call this the aquarium because the feeling I got was, God was saying, when you go to a dentist, they have aquariums to kind of relax you. And that was the kind of feeling I get. And every time I tell people about this story, everyone gets jealous. They don't get jealous about the rest of the parts, but they love this. And to be honest, like I wish I could bring this back, but it was like a one-time thing. In hindsight, I would say this moment was maybe God asking me, do I want more of, a supernatural sight? That's all I can really think of. It's like, because it never came back like that. It was a one-time thing at this kind of a crossroads, maybe it was a crossroads, and that's what was coming in. And I guess I said, yes, I want more supernatural sight. Alrighty. So in early April, I finished the Jodie Foster movie, and it made me think about like what happened before. And that got me thinking, oh goodness, wow, like they had not come back. And I went to bed, and they came back that night. And, the same thing. I don't have anything else to add about like just what they did. It was just they kind of swirled around your room, and then they go away. And then it happened a third time in mid-April. This is April 2009. But in the middle of it, I felt like I got a communication from God, and that was to look up the verse Acts 6:8. Like, what? Okay. So I checked the next morning, and it blew my mind. It said, this is from the NIV Bible. Now Stephen, a man full of God's grace and power, performed great wonders and signs among the people. That literally is what it said, and that's what I was just had this sense in the middle of like fighting off demons. Check out Acts 6:8 without knowing anything else about it. So, and then it went away. And keep in mind, every time this happened, I'd get only 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and I'd be very tired and go to work, calling sick late, and it's just bad. Late April 2009, I think it was the morning of the 30th, night of the 29th. They came back a fourth time, and I, having got this thing about Acts, like, all right, I know what happens in Acts. Jesus tells people to cast out demons. So I get up in the middle of the night, and I said, evil spirits in the name of Jesus, get out. And I don't, I say I'm in the mind's eye seer. I don't really see apparitions, and this is really the only time I ever did. And I saw an explosion of blue water that went for me like a wave. Like I jumped in water, like, you jump in a pool and the water just like goes out from you. That was that. And it was all with my natural eyes. And in terms of appearance, it looked like the blue lightning from Emperor Palpatine's hands in Return of the Jedi in Star Wars. But it just kind of moved like water and just spread out. I was just like blown away. And I looked at my right hand and held up to my face, and my arm was covered in the same blue lightning water. I distinctly remember a small piece of moving over my fingers and disappearing from my view as it moved over the back of my hand. This is what I said. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have said this, but I said, "My Lord, I'm ready." And immediately the blue water went away. I was very happy and vibrant for the next couple of days. I told people at church. I told other people that I knew, like, okay, like, wow, that's very interesting. Was the general response. And this is about like 3 days before my 33rd birthday, which is May 3rd, 2009. I say that because there is a tradition take it for what it's worth that Jesus was crucified on his, at age 33. I don't know if that's historically accurate, but that is a tradition and kind of the tradition I grew up with. So that was, my birthday was on Sunday, and then on Monday they came back. And they came back every night for the next 10 days. They did take the weekend off. And every night it messed my sleep. And this is the part that I really, just kind of like just hit me hard. I, would yell at them, cast them out, and I don't have anything else to add except it was just long, and it just happened every day for this continuous stretch. And I ended up missing 3 days of work, and I was just so tired. I in this time I rediscovered like Legos. You're like, wait, Legos? You're 33 years old playing with Legos? Absolutely. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, you just got to like stay sane. I built the Lego Death Star, like, I think like in 2 weeks. Oh man, that was like a lifesaver. I remember one time in the middle of all this, I opened my eyes. I didn't know what was going on. And, I see something and it just scared me. I almost had a heart attack. It was my cat. It was my cat. He like gave me the biggest heart attack, and I just gave him a big hug. And to be honest, like he was the only flesh and blood anything with me, so we had like a massive bonding at this time. My girlfriend didn't live with me at the time. I was just all alone. On the days I did make it to work, I once found the window open in my office cold, which I think is very, very odd because the cleaning crew never touched anything at all. They weren't supposed to. So was it theoretically possible the cleaning crew opened my window? Sure, of course. But the plausibility is just nothing, especially since they never opened my doors any other time in the 5 years that I was there. Or windows, I'm sorry. And another time, my computer started talking like a radio. And I even sent an email to the computer technicians to say, hey, turn off my computer talking from the radio. And by the time they arrived, it was, stopped. And they confirmed my computer did not have a radio function. It was just bad. And I used an analogy at the time that I was being dangled above a pit of insanity. Like I knew that if it continued, I would die one way or the other, like physically or mentally. So the last night was the worst. This is, the night of Wednesday, May 11th, going into Thursday morning. It was just really just strong and violent. At some point, one of them sort of like burrowed into my skull and just kind of just had his thoughts be my thoughts for like a brief millisecond. And then I pushed him out with my thoughts. I don't know how that works, but he got in there and like I pushed him out. Like I felt him kind of like, like in Star Trek 2 when the thing is just kind of crawling in a guy's ear. It was like that. And then like I pushed it out. But like for a half second there, it was there in my head, So the next morning, I was like, I couldn't do this anymore. I called in sick, and I'm very embarrassed about this, but it's also very understanding that I actually told my boss that there were demons and I couldn't sleep because of that. Like, wait, why? Why would I do that? Well, I knew he was very religious, and I thought that he would give me some more sympathy than it's all in your mind. The demons are caused by lack of sleep. Like he talked about his faith like every day. I'm like, okay, of one person that I could trust with this is my boss because he talks about his faith all the time. Well, a few days later, like, okay, so the next week, I'm sleeping again. I'll explain how. I get a visit from a firm partner, and he told me to go see a psychiatrist for my lack of sleep. Like, okay, that did not go well. But in the meantime, I learned how to sleep. I would combine NyQuil with melatonin, and the NyQuil would knock me out, and the melatonin would keep me asleep. And I'd feel, hungover the next morning, but I didn't care. It was like, this is awesome. Okay. This is what you do. And so the next week, I referral to a psychiatrist. I did see him. And I ended up telling him my story. And I actually interviewed him about how often people complain about spirits. And he said it's very rare. The psychiatrist prescribed me muscle relaxant drugs to help me sleep, but I never took them because my sleep had returned, and it actually was the wrong diagnosis. Like, this is kind of the theme here. It's like, do demons cause lack of sleep, or did lack of sleep cause demons? It depends. That answer depends on what you think. Do these things exist or not? The relationship between mental health and spiritual experiences. It depends a lot on what you think about that. And this is the world I was in. I, fish out of water, and the only help I could get was to say that this is, really in your head, that these things are a product of your sleep problems and not the other way around. I didn't go see the psychiatrist again, and for that I do regret. Not because the diagnosis he could give me was correct, but I didn't know what PTSD would be and how it would wreck me. It was real. And I'll get into my girlfriend in a minute, but she leaves me, and that was sort of my safety valve, and the PTSD would come. But also meant the only sympathy I could get from my firm, the lawyer community, was that it was a sleep disorder, not anything else. And I would have to deal with it on my own, assuming that the spiritual element was actually real. And I have to say this, like, I won't name him, but I actually feel a bit betrayed by my boss because I knew he was a Christian. And I confided him on that basis that, you're supposed to believe this stuff, not turn me in. So, yeah. And then it actually showed up my employment review back in, the next January. They asked me about my sleep disorder. I'm like, wait, I've been sleeping for 6 months. I've been fine. No one asked me about my PTSD or how are the demons doing. Oh, and also one last thing about this. We have a lot more of the story here, but this is the same time that the Angel and Demons movie was out in the theaters. So, oh my goodness. Like, what were the odds of that? All right. But anyway, so, late May, actually, I think probably like the sleep returned pretty quickly with that chemical cocktail. I was sleeping like a baby. Everything was fine. So for about a month, I just kind of lived in this weird zone. Like, what was that about? I had this inkling. It was mid to late June 2009. I'm like, hey, let's just ask God this question. I didn't expect to be answered, but I did ask it and said, God, what is the name of the angel that protects me? And then, boom, I saw it. It's like through my wall. I'm sleeping in bed. I see this picture. I see this angel at the foot of my bed, and I see letters in front of him. Like, you turn on the TV, and then there's stuff going across the TV, words, and it was like that. And it said, it was probably like 15 characters long, but I only remember the first 5. It was BNVXS. All vowels. I'm sorry, all consonants, no vowels. And I was like, whoa, what is that? And then I just kind of blew me away. And I just kind of just stopped I don't know. I was just kind of like frozen again. A few days later, I'm at like a church event, and like there's this random guy that shows up. He comes up to me and says, "God wants to give you your sight back." That those were like his words he used. I'm like, wait, what? It's like, I see you, and your eyes are like down to your chest, and that means that God wants to give you your sight back. I'm like, okay, let's talk to this guy. He turned out to be another sort of seer. We hung out the next day, and he gave me this idea, which might, I don't know, seemed to be kind of controversial to my church, that you can spar with them like a martial artist. So after we hung out, it's like, okay, I'll go to my rooftop, and I just started. I didn't know what would happen. I dressed up as like my kickboxer, and my kickboxer uniform, and I went up to my rooftop, and there was an angel there. He's like, okay, let's fight. I'm like, really? What? So we just started fighting, like sparring. It wasn't nothing dangerous. Like they would hit me, but like, I would be hurt. Like whatever. Like yeah, and I certainly would not hurt them. Um, and then at the end of it, it's like, oh, come back here tomorrow morning at 5:45, and bring your weapons. And I'm like, okay. So I did that, and it ended up happening for like a month. For about a month. This is July 2009. Maybe going into August, that I would go at 5:45 to the rooftop with my sword, my tonfa, size, commas, whatever, and we would like spar with angels, and it was actually kind of fun. It was actually a lot of fun, aside from waking up at 5:45. I eventually stopped doing it, in large part because I got sick. I think I got swine flu. Like, do you remember that? Like, it was really bad for small kids, but for adults, it was really it's like the flu. But that's what happened to me, and I just couldn't get up at 5:45 anymore, of course. And at this point, I'm starting to think, is this all just in my head? All this like craziness, and I'll go into my girlfriend in a second, and that was sort of part of it. So in early July, the same girl, like we were still like on very good terms. Sort of, even though she broke up with me in March, we were still like talking a lot, and like she kind of helped me through the craziness of May. And then she tells me the strangest story. She says that she can't date me anymore because she had a revelation from God of who she's supposed to marry, and it wasn't me. And I'm like, wait, what? This is craziness, like, girl. So that was it. And then she was adamant. She absolutely would not be convinced of anything else. So we just thought, that was that break. And for me, looking back at that, I just didn't think that was. I never thought that was really from God, because that's like, this is me in my most vulnerable time. And here she is, like, saying something like that. Like, God knows that, like, I'm on the precipice of massive PTSD, which, like, I really didn't have a whole lot of people to confide in all this with. So, but it is what it is. And the next day, after she broke up with me, I started getting like these voices or something about who I'm supposed to marry. And to cut it all, kind of get a long story short, I mean, it didn't pan out, but I'd get like all these detailed messages. It's like, come wait at the subway stop. And then I'd do that, and then like no one would show up. And like I'd get like pictures of her, and I was like, okay, I know what I'm looking for. Or like there was one time, she was supposed to have been like this girl who works at a hospital. Then like, okay, I get the voice told me to get off the subway and go, block south. So I do that, and there's a hospital there, which I had no idea it was actually there. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. The last thing was actually probably the biggest. It's Thanksgiving 2009, and I'm at down in Virginia, DC, and I get on the Amtrak, and the voices start talking. It's like, okay, go, like I don't know, the fifth car, the second entrance, go to the last row, and there she is. Like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. So I go there, and I actually see a girl who looks like her. I'm like, wait, what? This is for real? But here's the catch. Like, she's like 10 years younger than who she's supposed to be. Like, this girl was in college, she's like a freshman, sophomore in college. And not, somebody who's working in a hospital. And like, it was just a wild goose chase. It didn't turn out to be anything. And then it made me think that, these things, there's no sympathy. Like, they really, like, they know your vulnerabilities. They go after them like whatnot. Like, wow. All right. So where am I at now? It's like, what happened? So like I said, I ended up trying to sort this out on my own, in all kinds of problems. I'm sorry. All kinds of problems ensued because of that. But this is a good thing. 2009 Halloween was actually on a Saturday, and I had the best Halloween party. I called it the Angels and Demons party. Okay. I was like, okay, I can't tell the world what I do, what I see, but I can kind of do it this way. And so for that Halloween, I dressed up as the angels that I see. I painted myself in white, walked around. It was fun. It was something. It was actually a good party. It was I think one of the healthiest things I did to kind of alleviate what I was going through. And 2012, so a couple years later, it just caused me to become super religious. And this time, for obvious reasons. In 2012, I started a project where I did my own commentary on the entire Bible. And yeah, I did that. It took about a year and a half. I went with there's like Bible in a Year guidelines and stuff. And I went with that. And then that was how I did it. That set the schedule. In March 2012, like the most profound thing happened. And so let me just step back real quick that in July or August 2010, my cousin committed suicide. Okay. This is like a redemption of that. So when you're going through the Bible in a year, this was, like I said, like this was a set order of what you're supposed to read. In March 2012, I had a dream where I saw my cousin, and he was with Jesus, with 40 or 50 other people at a big feast, a party. Yeah, this is straight out of the Gospels. There's Gospels talk about heaven being like a big feast with Jesus, and it just blew my mind. Sorry, and my cousin looks at me and he just like gives me a thumbs up. Okay, it was very, very peaceful. The next morning, in the Bible Year Project, my own commentary, I come upon the Witch of Endor chapter, which I don't know if you know about that, but it's really the only ghost story in the entire Bible. And it made me think, wow, this was not in my head. This was like a real thing. Like I actually did see my cousin. Like, it's one thing to have a dream, but it's another thing to have it kind of sort of foster into reality in a very significant way. It's like, what are the odds of having a dream on that morning? I don't know. I don't know. And I also see things of like exceptional beauty. Like a few years ago, I was with a group of people, and this woman comes in with her like newborn child, and standing next to, like, she walked into the room, and standing next to her, I see the same newborn child, but as a young woman on her wedding day. And it was just so beautiful. I don't know. I mean, just I'm kind of lost in words. It's like these are things I see as well, you know. And the other thing what I kind of get through is I've broken up my story into small bits for fiction. Like I pushed into the idea that my story felt like like my own horror story come to life, and like, okay, if that's what it is, like I will tell my story through fiction. So I break it up like it's too much to just say. There's just way too much of that happen in those times, but with small anecdotes kind of buried into fictional, narratives, it's actually kind of an easy way to kind of tell my story. And the last thing I'll say is I definitely want to redeem this experience. That's kind of why I'm reaching out now, is like I've talked, or I've heard a lot of these paranormal encounters with people, and I think there's a common element to a lot of them, and I want to help people kind of redeem that, and also that I think I have some spiritual insight into this. Like, take it for what it's worth. Maybe I don't, but at the very least, I think I might have insight. So I want to start my own podcast where I kind of connect the things that I've learned about the spiritual world with our problems of today, say like global climate change and stuff, these things I think have a spiritual component that are unseen to a lot of people. So with that in mind, I'm going to close this out with, a bit of prayer. I want to pray for our paranormal community, us victims. And also, like, if you have any desire at all to see like an angel in your room, I want to pray for that. So, because I think this can be given from me to you if you have any desire to make any of this real. So, Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this community. I'm just grateful that so many people are talking amongst themselves about these encounters of this mysterious world we're in. And I just pray for healing for all the people who've encountered things that they cannot explain. It's just awful, to be honest. I get that. And there are things we just don't understand. And the isolation that comes from being felt like you're crazy is brutal. And so I also pray for those people who have any resonance with my story, that they want to see an angel or something. I pray that you show it to them. And just in Jesus' name, amen.
If you've had a paranormal experience and would like to be a guest on the show, please contact us by going to myparax.com. That's myparaex.com. Thanks for listening.